You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis show. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. So we want to, delve into whether or not you to let us know your views, whether you trust the political leaders. The president used a very important platform, State of the Nation's address, to commit to disbanding political vigilante. I say because I don't recognize that, I prefer Henrietta Mensah-Bonsu's nomenclature. Party militia and their warlords. Ace and the rest of them on the table this morning, around the table this morning, insist that there must be arrests of these people. So now that they have not been arrested, are we really solving the problems? Now that we know that we only go and evict them, are we really solving the problem? Do we trust the political leaders? The president, the NDC and its leaders who had all professed commitment to resolving this problem. Are they serious about it? Let's listen quickly to Osampofo as he was charged and released by the police on 400,000 cedis bail bond. And then we'll be back in the studio.
I want to assure all and sundry that we will not undermine the peace and stability of this country, but we will not own doctored messages. We still want to remain that whatever has been put out there in several forms or shapes are doctored to undermine the party. I want to end by thanking everybody and to assure you that we will continue to be law-abiding party. We will continue to observe the rule of law.
Right, okay, so I have to interrupt that. We'll play you one or two more of those sounds and then continue with that discussion. And some are asking that somebody was allegedly planning. He's been arrested. Okay, those who have been doing, what happens to them? Eviction. Okay, let's go to the phone lines and speak to Dr. Kwesi Enin. Dr. Kwesi Enin is with the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. He's the Director of Academic Affairs, and he has been on this show talking to us about this and was at the Emil Short Commission providing solutions, including resort to the UN for support. Is that where this has gotten to? Good morning and thanks for joining us, sir.
Yes, good morning.
Right. So if you have become aware of this documentary by Manasseh Azure-Awene, it's not strange to you, is it?
No, it doesn't surprise me that we have a militia of 5,000. But what surprises me is the location where this militia was based and was training. That's number one. Number two is the flagrant flouting of the laws of registration with respect to private security companies, if this is a private security company. And number three is the failure of our security and intelligence services to know that such an organization was located at such a sensitive, both security and a cultural and a historical site.
The author of the documentary inform us that it is not the case that national security is unaware, that in fact they attempted and failed. But government now says they actually succeeded. Joint national security and police evicted them in October of 2018.
So that even raises a more disturbing question. If national security was aware and the police visited them, then it puts in sharp relief the challenges of state institutions in performing the functions that by law they should be performing to protect lives and property. If national security and the Ghana Police Service were not able to dislodge this group as far back as October 2018, then there are disturbing questions that we have to ask. Number one, under whose authority and under whose powers, whether written or oral, could this group resist and flout the orders of statutory security agencies in the country?
The castle also... Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Furthermore, it just shows the limited powers of the institutions that we know should be protecting us. If other non-statutory organizations think they are better connected and they are better protected by a higher authority. So, having been dislodged, this is the time that we need to take a step back, reflect, and ask very difficult questions. And once more, the Parliamentary Committee on Defense and Interior cannot and should not keep quiet. These questions must be asked, and the people of Ghana, convinced.
You say your major
causing fear. Yeah.
You say your major surprise is, or really your surprise is, where the venue they were using for their training. The government says. The government says, as far back as 5th of March 2017, the president tasked the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture to spearhead the transformation of that place into a museum. So that is no longer a security zone. Shouldn't that be important?
No, that is untrue. First, when I appeared before the Short Commission, my vehicle was not allowed to enter because I was told it was a security zone, and I didn't have the appropriate authorization. Number two, no individual or group of individuals can use a place designated as a museum without authorization to perform this particular type of activity.
An activity is, and Kuma just mentions to us the law that criminalizes that particular activity that goes on. Okay, proceed.
Yeah. Okay. Any place of historical importance that is designated as a museum, and particularly for a previous seat of government. And if you look at the history, when the Queen of Denmark visited Ghana a couple of years ago, maybe 18 months, one of the important aspects of the Osu Castle was that is one of the few areas where the colonial Danish army actually lost a battle, in which the king of Akufo-Addo was able to take the key to the castle away. So when the Queen of Denmark came to Ghana, he visited the king of Akufo-Addo, and that key was shown to her. So that even if it has been designated under the Ministry of Tourism as a museum, it is of such priceless national, historical, and identity importance that no ordinary group or individual could have had access without much higher authority, flouting our own rules and giving that permission. So I think the explanations around this group having access just deepens the mistrust, first between the two parties, about the need to disband armed groups.
But this specific incident, this specific situation, what should be the approach of the state security now?
I don't think the state security itself, has the power to do anything, because they went there in October, and this illegal group, unregistered in Ghana, was able to flout their authority. Once more, it comes back to the political will, the sincerity, and the openness with which public discourse and rhetoric must be matched by what happens in secret. That kind of behavior creates fear, it creates mistrust amongst all parties, and once more, it undermines and hollows out the powers that we've given to statutory security forces and national institutions to function.
The president, although is the head of national security, so to speak, is taking a flag from former President Mahama, from the minority in parliament. In fact, they are saying he should resign. Do you think they are taking this a bit too far?
Well, look, let me look at the technical professional side and leave the politics out. You see, when we take the Ofosu Ampofu tape, plus his letter to the president, and the hula baloo that followed, and now this particular discovery by Manasseh, okay, it embellishes my point that there's so much mistrust and grandstanding between the two parties that they themselves alone cannot sit around the table to negotiate around disbanding such groups. Question, are there other such groups that we may not know about? Okay, look, we are playing a dangerous game with the existence of Ghana Incorporated.
Okay, you just asked a question. You asked a question that arouses my curiosity. You had assessed that there were about 28 of them so far. Was this group part of it?
This group was not part of it.
Okay.
This group was not part of it. So I'm going to make a very clear, bold statement. And let me phrase it as a question. Are there other groups in existence that the national security framework may know, but who are so powerful as to flout their orders to disband, as we have just seen? Or are there other groups in existence that we don't know at all, who are also training, armed, and might take instructions from people that we don't know? My fear and worry is that when you have 5,000 or more trained men whose authority is not to the state, but to individuals or to their paymasters, then it is easy for those groups to be infiltrated, particularly when they are afraid of being disbanded and going back to selling mobile phones and other things, that they will then switch their allegiance to anyone, Ghanaian or non-Ghanaian.
What's your worry? They may not have come under your radar because they are what they say they are and not what we are now seeking to project them to be. And again,
look,
and again, okay, yes, go ahead.
Look, when people make this noise that they are not militias, you see, we've got to be very careful about charlatans in this business making assessments and conclusions for which they don't have any empirical evidence nor have any research evidence. You don't need any particular skill sets to become a militia. And I think for the sake of this country, we shouldn't engage in semantics.
So it doesn't really matter that they are being trained by retired military officers.
That even makes it more dangerous because retired military officers, look, the military is a very unique, specialized institution with particular skills. When you retire, those skills don't go away in terms of weapon use, stripping and assembling those weapons, even in the dark or when you are blindfolded. Shooting to hit at your target, the ability to assemble explosives and to manufacture IEDs. Okay, so the fact that those who train them are retired doesn't make them less dangerous or less knowledgeable. Now, when you pass on those skill sets, 5,000 men under arms or trained to use weaponry is bigger than the Air Force. Or I think it's bigger than the Air Force and the Navy combined. Okay, we've got to look at the figures and not allow so-called experts without any clue, a track record in both research and empirical field work to muddy the waters.
Okay. Now maybe quickly.
Potential threat to Ghana. Earlier, we are honest.
You have said that. You have said that. Can you finish in a minute for me? And I want you to tell me, if my daily routine is to join a group of energetic men wanting to exercise, and we are trained sort of. We are helped to exercise by either former military persons or even persons who are in the military current. Does that automatically constitute us into a militia or a group that is seeking to be vigilante?
No, those who are in the physical education side of the military are not the people who train others to go to war.
Okay.
Those in the education side of the Ministry of Defense are not those who train people in how to shoot.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
So if these retired military men have skill sets in weapons handling, then it transforms the training into something else.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Kwesi, for
it's always a great pleasure.
Your incisive insights once again. And let me come back here and let's see if we can get some solutions. But Ace, a very good friend of yours, and I won't tell you who he is, later I'll do, wants me to ask you, if you were engaged in training for the purposes of self-defense, if I were involved in Taekwondo, for example, and we were a lot of us, and we gather maybe every Saturday morning to do that, are we also offending the laws that you have referred to on military training and security provision?
No. Those who know. An army officer also sent me a text and said, we know the difference. That the first indication is calling the people to attention. He said, when I watched the video, I knew that some military-style person has been training them, as they themselves admit. And this is a military person engaged with the UN right now. So he says, we can tell if it's a military-style training, and that when I watched the video, the ability to call them to attention is the first detail before the rest happen. And so, look, we all know Taekwondo training. I've said on this, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, looks like a duck, it is a duck. And so, if we want evidence on what amounts to military training, we are all the soldiers in Ghana can tell. But we need to get into this. In the lead up to independence, NLM CPP clashes. It led to the formation of two groups, the action troopers by the NLM and the action groupers by the CPP. The height of their fight was between 1954 and 1956, where literally what we had on our hands in Ghana was a civil war quietly happening. People were being maimed, killed, butchered, all in the lead up to independence. This doesn't stop after independence. So right from the very, very beginning, the concept of power became militarized. Once you have power, you exercise it by brute force. And if you exercise it by brute force, the other people also militarize to meet the brute force. And with this, I'm talking about the militarization of the civil support system. But you find that this ultimately dovetails even into the military system. The confusion of the time and the violence at the time led to significant attempts on Nkrumah's life. 1962, Kulungugu, right? But I think the close Kulungugu was dangerous. But Ametewe in 1964 and the killing of Salifu Dagati at the Flagstaff House was interesting. In fact, I printed out Salifu Dagati's words about Ametewe's words that he meant to shoot the president. Yeah. But Salifu Dagati first offered his body and allowed the president to escape. And so as he shot at the president, he ended up shooting Salifu Dagati. That's what he claimed. Of course, the court found him guilty. That was on 2nd January 1964. Before this time, there was a part of the army called President's Own Guard Regiment from 1960. But at the time, they were basically ceremonial. But definitely from 1964, there was the need, Nkrumah saw the need to militarize them. So they moved that body from 1964-95 and 64-65 into a full regiment, which is some believe had over 1,200 men, 1,200 staff, personnel, by the time of the coup. And then brought in a very interesting character in Ghana's history, Colonel David Bong Zanerugu, to be the commander of it. And indeed, history shows that the president's own guard was so well resourced that the military was envious of them. Come 24th February 1966, when the coup happened, the real battle was between the military and the president's own guard. The president's own guard, according to history records, were trained in the Soviet Union. They were crack, heavy, they knew how to fight. They held out for 3 days. Colonel Zanerugu was not arrested till 27th February 66. And he says that it's basically because they ran out of ammunition. They were that well trained that the whole army was after these people, and it took 3 days to arrest Colonel Zanerugu. In fact, when they arrested him, he was such a high quality person, that when he wrote a letter on toilet roll and smuggled it out of prison, he was tried for smuggling, for abetment of smuggling. Go and read it. It's reported. Zanerugu versus the state. He was freed by the Court of Appeal, throughout the conviction. So Colonel Zanerugu's people showed that maybe there's a missing middle between the police and the military. Is Ghana ready to recognize this? That maybe for our political leaders, because of our historical antecedents, the violence, the coups, that you are not even sure that your bodyguard, who you didn't choose, is not part of the coup against you, because there are stories, and I'll mention some of them, where the president was arrested by his guard as part of the coup. So the guard was part of the coup. Yeah. Will you trust a military person who is made your guard, whom you don't know, with whom you have no links, and there's no loyalty? Let's skip all the other regimes, because really we went to PP 2 years, they were out. The military came in, FRC came in, we went to PNP 2 years, they were out.
During Le Mans, there were 19 coup attempts. 19. So that still shows you that
in 2 years.
Yeah, 19. There is an book.
Yeah, but there are some things that I know one of the people who was arrested for one of the coups personally. If you check the names, you might find a link. But
there's a lawyer too. Yes.
I know about that. Yeah. Now, so come the rolling school. He was not prepared to allow this to happen. There was a deliberate decision to militarize all aspects of our society in support of revolution. Exactly. So there were the PDCs, although they said militarization doesn't really mean they've been given arms, but there's a certain level of training for the communities. There was WDCs. Yeah. Later they became committees for the defense of the revolutions. In fact, on top of them, there was the NDC, the National Defense Committee. Yeah. There was the CDRs. The Mobi squads. They were military. There was the People's Militia. They were called militia. They were trained. Go back to our legal history. Adekura versus the Republic.
Adekura was the commander of a militia that was posted in Bolgatanga to prevent smuggling from the tunnel irrigation process, the site. Yeah. He saw a vehicle coming. He stopped the vehicle. The vehicle didn't stop. He had an AK-47. He fired 5 rounds into it, killed a student, was tried, convicted of murder, and this was 84. And in 87, he was pardoned and freed. Come to Circle. The Salifo Amankwa Circle City Guards was a militarization of an attempt to make Ghanaians disciplined. And those times, if you walk around Circle, it is marked with white. If you stray into the white, you are arrested. People were arrested, subjected to physical exercises and beatings for littering and for walking out of the designated walking spaces. In the process, somebody else was killed. Salifo Amankwa was arrested, tried, convicted for murder, and freed. And so there has been there was the militarization, but the critical one was the commando unit, which became the Forces Reserve Unit, became Forces Reserve Battalion, and became the 64 Infantry Brigade. And if you look at the job, their job was to protect the president and the revolution. So this was a president who had come out of the military. But he felt that his personal protection and the protection of VIPs needed another unit. Look, when the Constitution was coming into force, they integrated this FRB into the military. It wasn't until 2003 that integration was completed under Dr. Akufo-Addo. There's a GNA story which shows that it was in 2003 that the full integration of the commando unit, which became FRB, etc., was integrated into the army. But on the ground, nobody has stopped building these groups. NPP, NDC, and I believe some of the smaller parties have all had these people, because look, as the presidential candidates move around the country, they require security help. Because, ladies and gentlemen, let's stop kidding ourselves. There's a lot of violence that is going on the political space that we sitting in Accra probably do not see. Well, when they made the mistake of really bringing it into Accra, we set up a commission to investigate. And so historically, you sought to match yourselves by brute strength. Ghana, that is the truth. Are we going to go on from here, or are we going to stop it? Well,
do you believe we are going to stop it?
Well, if we want to. Well, and look, if you look at the history, when it comes to elections, the forces are so dissipated that we don't see a certain level of violence. It happens in some police stations, but it's not that concentrated. But if it is a by-election, then all the evil forces are concentrated in one small space, and so we begin to see Etiwa, Triponi, and the little Akwetian wasn't really a by-election, just for 6 police stations. The violence you see there has been cooking for years. The people involved in the violence know each other. In fact, some of them have worked at opposite sides. And so they are unleashed. And look, everybody, take a look at the video on the beatings at Ayawaso. Deputy Superintendent Azugu is the commander, was supposed to be the commander. Look at when the beating started. Azugu was telling the people who were working under him to stop.
Yes.
They disobeyed him. Now, no properly trained military force would disobey the commander. If the commander says stop, they stop. The fact that the commander was asking them to stop, but those attired boys were still beating the person up, shows you that there was a major breakdown of the authority structure on the ground.
So quickly, in a minute, do you trust the present process that is being initiated?
Look, the day after, when we had seen it, and when Occupy Ghana had seen the videos and having been aware of this history, we demanded a Chapter 23 Commission of Inquiry. The government didn't respond, and literally, we were on the verge of issuing a statement that said we're going to court when the government issued the statement that it will set it up. So we issued that statement as well. And then we endorsed the Commission of Inquiry. We have complete confidence in the people who were chosen. And you can see it. Justice Short, in this calm manner, and having dealt with, he was at the Arusha court.
Arusha court, yeah.
So he knows about these things. Professor Mensah Bonsu, breath of fresh air. My prof from Legon days. The former IGP, his questions are practical. He knows He knows the beat.
Yeah.
You know, we have seen how people who have gone there thinking they're going to lie have been so interestingly exposed. I hope that those who are exposed will be tried for perjury.
That's right.
Yeah.
But we have grown men prepared to go and sit there and tell plain lies. I hope that they are tried for perjury to serve as an example. But there are some offenses that are never tried in Ghana, like perjury and bigamy.
So it is the Emil Short path that you trust.
I believe that on the third level, if the Emil Short Commission goes beyond just Ayasu West Wogon and begins to delve into these issues, some of these things that I'm talking about will come up. But let's agree on one thing. Ladies and gentlemen, there are two entities that can stop this. Two. New Patriotic Party, National Democratic Congress. You guys are the source of what we are talking about. All of these have their roots in you. Let's stop the hypocrisy and blaming of each other. NPP, NDC, you are the source of this. You may not own them directly on paper, but you know the boys. You know when to harvest these boys to use them.
Okay.
So this is my view. Let's lock up the president, the ex-president.
What do you say? Lock up president?
Yeah, the president. Not arrest.
Okay.
The president, ex-president, ex-president Rollins, ex-president Kufo, the chairman of MPP and DC, and keep the key to they come up with a solution.
And the mediators.
Well, no, the six of them should mediate among themselves.
Oh no, we need civil society present.
Yeah, civil society.
Yes.
No, they can solve this. They are the source of this. And so if we give this the opportunity,
wait. I won't let you speak further before national security invades.
No, but there's a last.
Once you are asking for the president to be locked.
No. The numbers are huge. Nobody has the statistics, and I'm not going to throw a number out here before it becomes a headline.
Okay.
We may have to ask ourselves as a nation that there are people who have known this as their source of livelihood. Is Ghana prepared to settle them as a price for getting our peace? That I understand there are thousands. That it is time to not just disband, to demobilize them and let them re-enter life. Is that the price we are prepared to pay? And then let's begin to ask ourselves, is it time for that medal, that national security force, properly recognized? Because this force is an illegality. I could take you back to PNDC, where under national security provisions under the PNDC, you were 42.
So,
anyway, maybe I've said more than I can say.
Thank you.
But I'll come to the critical point.
So you wanted to tie in immediately.
Yeah.
Then I'll come to Mona.
Thank you, sir.
But he seems to believe in that theory that was being asked by Professor Mensah Bonsu to find these people jobs. After disbanding, we disarm and we find them jobs. There are people who are angry at that kind of suggestion. Why should we be the ones to find anybody a job?
Okay, I don't know which one, whether my tie in or I should answer
tie in first.
So I think what my senior colleague said boils to two important terminologies in political science.
I like the way you guys are simplifying it. Yeah.
Regime security, state security. Which one do we go for? Do we have to invest even in recruiting private militia to protect a regime? Or we need to provide security for the state? So if you look at historical, all these committees and vigilantes, they are meant to provide regime security. Because even in the past, you've had reasons to believe that even the military will not protect the regime. So you need to, in your own way, protect your regime. Why are the regime in place in the first instance? They are supposed to serve the state. So why don't we just do whatever we want to do and make sure that we go for state security rather than regime security? Because these people are militias outside of the state security apparatus. What happens to them if the regime falls? We saw what happened in Iraq.
You still don't believe that this kind of analysis is blowing things out of proportion?
No.
That somebody is being trained as regime security?
Definitely.
To protect a democratically elected president?
Because they are usurping the power of the state security apparatus. Why do we have to bring an I group to provide security when we have the military, when we have the police, when we have the national security? Do you understand? So this was what happened when Saddam fell in Iraq. The regime security people had to run away. And we saw what happened after the formation of Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb and all those things.
I'm interjecting, but when you say, why do we have to bring an I group to come and protect the state?
Provide security for a kind of state function.
Is that not you feeding into the speculation from the documentary?
But the documentary was out there. It was based on historical events. Or was Manasseh lying? There were evidence to show that the I people provided security.
For a party function.
Okay, but
even though it was attended by all who matter.
Okay, now let's come back to all the historical events that Senior Colleague mentioned. They were actually meant to protect the regime. And we still have them now, even in the Fourth Republic. So why are we spending money on state security institutions when they cannot provide security? That's my first concern. And we have to think about state rather than regime, even though it's a very difficult thing to do. Now, your question was what? The last one that you just asked.
About, we having to provide them jobs.
Yeah, I think
we want to get rid of this situation.
I think it's very important. You see, I will even prefer, though more controversial, to licensing these organizations than disbanding them. Because one, they have acquired a kind of skills that you can never take away from them.
To licensing them?
Yes, it may be controversial. Because I think...
So you shouldn't have a problem as a nation that they get integrated into security once the party wins power.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm thinking that fine, before you practice as a, what's the name, security company, you need to be licensed. And the license means that you are now under the purview of the law. And when you go contrary to the terms and conditions of the license, the state can deal with you.
Right.
That one puts them under the purview of the law and to regulate it than just leaving them as an invincible forces, whatever forces. Most of them are neither registered, and therefore the state cannot control them, and they are only answerable to the individual or the political party that they own allegiance to, and not the state, and not the laws of the country. So I think once we talk of disbanding them, we can't just disband them back to the society with the kind of skills that they have acquired. We need to make sure that we put those skills into a good use. And if you don't put those skills into a good use, then they are going to use it in their own way. And that's going to engender our peace and security as a country. So I agree to the fact that if we are calling for disbandment, we can't just disband them like that. They will definitely find a means to survive. And with the kind of skills that we give to them as part of this group, they're going to use it, whether legally or illegally. And that's going to endanger our security. So if you are disbanding, we should find them something.
You heard the group leader, or two of them on two different occasions at the castle grounds, as the government statement makes us understand. Castle grounds. On one occasion, one of them is unhappy that they are getting arrested and they are calling their leaders for rescue. Then on another occasion, one of them says, we should be thankful to God. We applaud you that this weekend there were any reports of arrest because you guys didn't engage in any criminal acts.
So Samson, they are still even being controlled by a group. And this has happened. They have issues to deal with the law. They've fell foul of the law, and then they've been dealt with, and they are calling for support. How much more if we just disband them and say, okay, go away. We don't need vigilante groups. What will they do? Because they can't just go and sit home like that.
What will they do? Commit crime?
Yes.
You're arrested and punished. That's what a responsible state should do.
Okay. We know they have been responsible state and security apparatus, and groups of this kind, maybe about 50 or so, have caused serious security breach for them. Because the kind of training that they have, the police have similar training, or even maybe they are even better trained than them, and they have access to weapons. So you cannot just arrest him like the way you arrest me or they will arrest you. They will have to put up a fight, and a more brilliant fight for that matter. And where are we heading to?
Okay. Now, Mona, I can see you are ready with some points in there. But there's one thing also that I'm thinking about. The state's explanation to this particular group is that its leader was to do confiscation of assets wrongly taken by previous administration. Ace may help me here too. What capacity will that individual, who the president as a candidate didn't find worthy to continue to be his bodyguard, what capacity will he have to be doing this job on behalf of the state? Is he, at the time, did he have a registered company that could do these confiscation processes and so on? Does that not also sound to you a bit bizarre?
Samson, first of all, I want to thank Ace for the history so that we see how these things have
he claims he doesn't know anything beyond the law.
Well, how it has always been there. I also want to just add that if we even look at international history, we'll find that it's been in other countries as well. It's something that has been going on because of a fear factor, the de factos wanting to be in place and so forth. So it's unfortunate, but we are where we are, and fear has continued to play this role. I'll just answer your question briefly. Ace can add to it, then I'll go to my points. So using this person, first of all, I'm sure familiarity, knowing him, he's been my bodyguard before and so forth. In fact, the president may not have chosen him, but people in the president's group may have said, oh, let's find something for this gentleman to do. If you remember, when the NDC came into power as well under Professor Atta Mills, we also had to retrieve some properties, government assets. They were government assets.
Those people worked from the Flagstaff house.
Yes, from the castle.
Okay.
From the castle. They had. Did they set up in Flagstaff house? No, they were in the castle.
They were presidential staffers.
Staffers, yes, and they worked under the chief of staff, if you remember. And there were even some problems about cars being brought back and how they were sold.
So that's
and
the question:
forth.
Is this guy an employee?
So I'm
of
coming
the state?
to that. So for this person who is not, because if you remember when I first spoke about it, I referred to chief of staff. Ordinarily, it is done under that office. For this to be done by someone that you are just familiar with, so that your group, the president's group of people, just say, let's use this gentleman again. Clearly, he is not properly skilled to handle this. What then happens, and I'm sure that's what happened, because there were a few examples that I heard of in town, is that he now creates a kingdom where he can leave the asset with you or take it depending on what you give to him. Right. So you are creating a whole corruption issue with this kind of thing, using someone who is not properly titled, hired by government to do this. And in fact, you are giving, again, what we said, recognition to someone who should not be used in the system. So that was so wrong. And I hope that when the government made the apology about overlooking him and should have removed him, that apology covers that as well. And therefore, they should note that apology they made, which is an admission of their failure to handle this, is now out there. Okay,
so proceed to your substantive.
And we may not accept it, but it's there. Yeah. We want to see some action rather than we after the facts, after all that we've heard, where even the chairman of the NDC party has been accused because of something he's supposed to have said, even though people didn't even understand the meaning. He's been accused, he's been almost charged, he's on bail and so forth. And where people have actually done things, as you rightly said, and they are just sitting there. In fact, we've come up with a commission for this. One of my concerns is, what will the results of the Emil Short Commission do? What will it become? How effective will it be in ensuring that we resolve this problem? I hear that it shouldn't just, from around the table, it shouldn't just be about what happened at Ayawaso, but it should deal with vigilantism and party militia. I really hope that it doesn't become a report that sits on the shelf, but that it will go out to resolve a certain trend that for all of us in this nation, we are beginning to worry about. So that is very important for me. Life after disbanding these people. Now, this situation is not peculiar to only Ghana. We've had the situation in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, in other parts of the world where either after a war or after a very nasty situation, the state has had to deal with these people. Whether you like it or not, they are still Ghanaians. They have gone through a certain negative training. It's going to take a bit of time and resources to turn them back. We cannot say that straight from disbanding them, they are integrated into society. The process of integrating them into society is going to take some work and some resources, human resource in terms of psychologists and so forth, and funding to deal with that. And that even brings me to the case of children on the street. Whenever you are taking children off the street into society, you do the same thing. You work on them. Prisoners from jail into society, they go into a halfway house and you work on them. There is going to be the need, and I agree completely with Professor Henrietta Mensah-Bonsu that we will need to spend some money to get these Ghanaians who have missed the path, to bring them back. Unfortunately, I don't agree with the professor here about them going into military or going into our police or using them in the same way they've been trained before. We have to deorient them, if that is even the right word, and get them to be more useful in another way. You know, this is going to need some work and it will need some money. And I agree that we do need to work on this. The thing that I think will help with the bigger issue is something is alluded to. Who are the people who encourage these things? It is our political leaders who encourage these groups. And it has happened even before independence. We saw that happening. We also even see it sometimes in wealthy individuals who create little armies to protect them. Unfortunately, we also see it with some of our leading pastors in this country. And in other parts of West Africa, maybe in other places. But what I know is Ghana and Nigeria. And we are seeing it now in South Africa too. Here's a little pastor. All of a sudden, he thinks he's so important. He needs this little army. So we are creating demand for this kind of service from all these so-called wealthy people who think that their lives are more important than other people.
And isn't it surprising that these charlatans are the ones who appear to get the great number of people following them?
Indeed, yes, they do, because it is money talking. You know, at the end of the day, this work is even an easy job.
Pure, clear thieves. You see them, and yet they command so much
respect, because they are leaders. They are spheres of influence. Exactly. We worship money. So this job, you can become almost a professor in quotes in 3 weeks and become rich, have a lot of money. It's an easy path. All you need to do is to build your muscles, have a certain voice, have a few boys that you can control, and you are on a roll for money. I want to agree with Ace to an extent, but how it is done may be about getting these responsible people, the presidents, the past ones who are still around, and the current one. I don't think President Akufo-Addo should be asking the chairpersons of the parties to sit down and deal with it. I think he should be in that, around that table. President Mahama around that table. President Rawlings and ex-President Rawlings and ex-President Kufuor should also be around that table. The people who do these things and the people who are affected must see the leaders sitting together and discussing how to get out of this situation. I don't think that we will rule this thing out to zero. No, there will still be pockets of it. But let us reduce it, because the tensions that are arising now, I don't need to say it. We all know it's not good for any person, whichever party you are in. So I think that the 4 presidents we have today, I hope I haven't missed any, the 4 presidents we have today will agree that they will take time out and sit around a table and come out with a strategy, a plan, a clear action plan, and have the police and the military, the formal, properly identified people, action this plan, so that, in fact, they will be seen as the people who made this turnaround on behalf of Ghana. I think this is very important.
Martin, let's have your say, and then we will take a quick break. Return to briefly go to the Emil Short Commission, just briefly, to analyze what we have seen happen at the place, including something that, you know, may be an offshoot of these developments. Yes. So, how do we go? Lock them up?
Yes, it's in that region, just about that region, because, you know, the party chairmen have not been forceful at all. I expected that once the president gave that directive, at least his own party chairman would have taken very diligent steps at bringing the directive to fruition. But so far, there's been that feet dragging. Yeah, I understand there was a telephone call or so, and not much is being heard. Look, they need a full PR system for this dialogue. They need to hire professionals to help in the process. The president himself mentioned that security agencies could help. Okay, so I think, look, as citizens, we need to get up and push.
The NDC decided to be the first to initiate the step.
Yes, and that's
after the president made the call. Commendable, but they had a letter giving conditions.
Don't call them conditions.
They gave conditions. Yeah, but they also made proposals as to who should be the mediators. You've seen
it
the
is only
response.
a proposal.
You've seen the response from the presidency.
Yes.
What do you say?
Yes, the president's response to be honest baffles me, because I would have expected that he would embrace all the segments of our society. We need an inclusive this approach, okay,
to conflict
this, because
resolution.
you know exactly. You know, we have this popular Ghanaian adage that one man cannot embrace a baobab tree. It's so huge, and simply knowledge doesn't reside in one man's head. So if you have, or two heads are better than one. So the president's response was quite puzzling to me, to say the least. Look, and especially, it's not right to just say that the two parties alone. We've shown that in history, CPP had vigilante. In history, the PMP, Liman's party, they had vigilante. Today, they have their offshoot, the PNC. You never know what could happen in our political dynamics. Let's not for one moment just assume that into the future we'll have only NDC and NPP dominating our political landscape. That is false. Look, check U.S. history. You hear about the Federalists. They once loomed large in U.S. politics. They were in government for a number of years. But after 1801, that's it. And they've never recovered from that.
They're the same people who seem to suggest that we can't trust these people to resolve these issues. Number one, because of the things that have played out. Let's say God just decided to expose the people to us.
Yes.
After the president makes the pledge, or even before the president makes this commitment, Ofosu Ampofo is the one who tells all Ghanaians that there should be a way.
Yes.
Then, a couple of days after that, the president delivers his speech and speaks as though he and Ofosu Ampofo had been at a meeting and drafted a statement together. Then we have a leaked tape. That's on which Ofosu Ampofo, well, he denies he's the one, but you and I know that's just insulting the intelligence of Ghanaians. Look, I'll tell you that.
Okay.
President Mahama has tried to explain the content of that comment.
But the accused
that is an admission.
Is denying. So
that is
let's grant him
admission.
his constitutional right Article 19.
If he is not the one, what is the job of the president explaining the content? Let's look at it this way. Now we have a tape in which he is preaching the contrary to what he has promised Ghanaians. Yeah. Now we have the president also go to the 6th March parade, very beautiful event. You know, a novel idea to take it outside of the capital.
Also commendable.
Then Manasseh releases this documentary showing that all is not well.
Yeah.
So how can we trust them, continue to trust them, to be the ones to lead the process?
Something before Martin says anything, I'm sorry to burst in, but Martin, even as you speak, let us all know that the answer is always in the problem. Exactly. So the issue about trusting them, since we believe that they are the source, not that we believe they are the source, the answer is in the problem. So by all means, they must be a big part of it, not a commanding part.
My question is that, assuming that, like I said, God had not exposed them this way, they would have been...
Would have continued.
Sort of...
occupied a high moral...
Yes, and would have trusted that they are resolving it. Meanwhile, in their closets, they are promoting the wrong thing.
I still wouldn't trust them.
I'm not
okay, Dr. Ali says he doesn't trust them. Let's see what he has to
well, yes, trusting or not trusting them would not necessarily spoil the process. Look, in this world, let me bring a few foreign examples so you see. Look, in life, you will not always have everything aligned for you, your interests. The other day, I was citing the example of the U.S.-China relations. You know, right now, U.S. companies are complaining about espionage, trade secrets and all that. Chinese companies are taking their secrets and all that. Yet they are still trading, and yet they are negotiating. You say, then they have the issue of slapping tariffs on each other. Yet they are still dealing with each other. You have the Palestinians and the Israelis. They've killed each other, and yet they are still talking, trying to forge peace. We could multiply the examples. So it tells you that, look, having a process that is riddled with mistrust is not new, but let's get to it. The president gave the directive, was on 21st February during the SONA. Until they haven't gotten to the table. It's way too long. That's how come we are getting impatient.
They are responding to letters that have suggestions and conditions.
Yeah, it's keeping the dialogue, but that's not where the president asks that the dialogue take place. He asks that they sit, that there be a dialogue. So please, His Excellency, I think he has to direct his party chairman to do the letter, invite the NDC. Otherwise, I'm sure next week by this time,
allow him. Yes.
We as citizens, look, will organize, go into the streets, and then compel them.
Yes, but you,
two quick ones.
You were saying two quick ones, including what you said.
That I don't trust. Even
number one,
if
you
this
don't
didn't
trust.
come, I wouldn't still trust them.
Number two, that you had a problem with the president's response. The presidency's response to some purpose letter. What's your problem with
Samson
it?
One, this vigilante issue is now a national issue. It's not a party issue. So you don't expect only two parties to sit down and deal with it.
That's right.
It's a national issue. And every stakeholder concerned with the peace and security of this nation is now part of the process. That is one. Two, political parties are the direct beneficiaries of these actions. And they keep them, or even if not the party, but individuals within the party, use them for political leverage and also to make sure that the party wins. So I don't see why only these two can sit down and do it. We need a mediator. And the mediator has to be somebody who is neutral and somebody we can all trust. So that when these political parties are coming with all these partisan positions that they're going to take, somebody can come with words of reason and then let them, come closer to an agreement. If we leave them alone, it will never happen. Or what may happen is that they may find a new name and a new way of doing this old thing and then come and present it to Ghanaians as if it is a new solution. When we know that it is actually meant to protect what they do and what they want to do moving forward. So honestly speaking, I don't think NDC and NPP alone can sit down and solve this issue. It's beyond them. It's not a national issue. And everybody who's concerned with peace and security in this country must be a stakeholder. And we need a neutral arbiter to sit down and make sure the right thing is done, and then we are all party to it.
And you know,
if we don't let this happen, if you don't let it happen that way, then it's going to be dangerous. And that's why I think the president's response to the NDC's proposals, the way they responded to it, wasn't actually good moving forward. When we are actually looking at peace, when people make a proposal, that's in negotiation process. We all make proposals. We all take entrenched positions. And when people take positions in an interest, you have to explore the interest.
There were not only proposals. The proposals the NDC gave included who should be the mediators and the place to hold the meetings and so on. I don't think that should be much of a problem.
No. Exactly.
But they had conditions. They said they pointed accusing fingers at the president and his party, and they said you have done ABC, you have already integrated some, invisible or Delta
into the national security
First of all, get them out and stop this before all of this.
That should have even made the president even welcome the process.
No, but it happens. Once these things start, people grandstand, make unreasonable demands. But it's a starting point. Everybody takes a decision. We can find the middle ground. I don't think we need to be worried about these letters.
In conflict resolution, we have a difference between position and interest.
Yes.
You see, the position is the entrenched position that people take in negotiation. The interest is their concern. What is the concern that makes them take this entrenched position? They have a serious concern. Okay. And we know over the years that when people come to power, they take the steps to integrate these bands into the military. And all these political parties since 1992 have been in government. Okay, and they know what they have done.
So let's get a bit of perspective.
I think I have 1 minute.
Let's get a bit of perspective on the president's response. And he wrote personally in response. Now, after acknowledging receipt of the letter, it teaches us to stop that. After acknowledging receipt of the letter and everything else, then he says...
The long sentence.
Yes, he says that on the matter of the impact of the dialogue on the work of the short commission, they had asked the question, you have set up a short commission and you are asking us to meet again, which one should we... So he said, on that matter, I see no conflict, and I cannot see how the work of the commission can be compromised by a voluntary dialogue between the two main political parties in our country. Now, to the substance of the letter, you have made two requests. This is Akufo-Addo speaking. You have made two requests. Firstly, to extend the call for disbandment not only to the New Patriotic Party, and the National Democratic Congress, but to all political parties, civil society organizations, representatives of the media, representatives of the military, police, and other security agencies, as well as other relevant stakeholders. I am not aware of any vigilante groups that are associated with any of these bodies. As your letter suggests, political party vigilante activity in the country has unfortunately been associated with the National Democratic Congress and the New Patriotic Party. This admission is good. I thus see little basis for your request. So his request that they should bring in media, civil society, the president says that is, and you shouldn't bring in. Secondly, your request for mediators and facilitators of the dialogue. I am dismayed, and I believe that the Ghanaian people share my dismay, that the two parties who have dominated and continue to dominate the politics of the Fourth Republic, who between them have garnered at least 95% of the votes in each of the 7 general elections of the Fourth Republic, who have provided all 7 governments of the Fourth Republic, who are the only parties currently represented in the 7th Parliament of the Fourth Republic, cannot meet to dialogue on matters of our nation's governance and political culture without the intervention of outsiders, including foreign entities. Remember, they had asked for foreign entities, including, is it the UN, to come in, no matter how well-meaning. I had hoped that the proposed meeting would be without preconditions on either side. I am aware that Mr. Freddie Blay, chairperson of the New Patriotic Party, has made an initial contact with you about the holding of the proposed meeting. My own view is that that meeting would take place as soon as possible and all matters ventilated there. And the outcome of the meeting or meetings will be appropriately addressed. It is important that we trust in our own capabilities to resolve our own problems. Government stands ready to provide a venue if it is the wish of the two parties. Once again, I thank you for your letter, and I am hopeful that we can all work together to achieve a positive result for our country and spare it the unnecessary consequences and traumas of vigilantism. Yours sincerely, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana. So what is the problem with his response?
Yeah, I think I had the residue of that.
Yes.
Look, Samson, the 95%, okay, suffers serious problems. Look, the fact that we vote for a party doesn't mean that we necessarily subscribe to the ideologies and the programs of the party. Sometimes you just have to vote because, look, we don't have a better choice. So the president shouldn't be overly confident that 95% means that they represent us. No, look, listen, we've all made it very clear that it's good to have neutrals at the party.
Doesn't he have an important point when he say at least have your first meeting or your first couple of meetings and both of you can agree on what you want to do next?
Oh, sure, that one I can go with it, that they can meet first. But to say that no other person should come to the table, I think that is seriously flawed. That one the president has to reconsider. He's done excellent by initiating this dialogue because you remember day one, even when the commission started, we made it clear at this table that we couldn't wait for the commission to finish, the short commission to finish before we dialogue, because we need the two to move simultaneously. Because you know that the political temperature had risen so high, people were feeling very insecure, so you need to start dialoguing, to start bringing up solutions, okay? So the president is done well, but this latter letter seems to be whittling away all the marks he scored for that bold initiative. So he should just loosen up, look, allow other people to come to the table. Let's not forget, just in recent times, in 2012, when we had this same vigilante dialogue, was it not Utumfo and IDEC that led the process? Yeah, I don't know why we have such a short memory, but I remember clearly that in 2012, this same problem took so much national attention to the extent that eventually we had to go. But
it was not exactly about political vigilance.
No, it was about the violence and everything. Resolution. Yes, it was all about, yes, a larger picture, but that is the whole area. And so we had these people, the Utumfo is still at post, we still have IDEC.
It was spearheaded by IDEC.
So why don't you? So people who have already shown a good track record at helping us such matters must be brought to the table.
Okay.
So look, that's why I said this big English is becoming too much. Look, let's have the meeting slated. Let's have it scheduled. That's all.
So before we take the break, shouldn't we forget about all of these processes and pursue the path that the police have now, found? Ace will use the terminologies. They found the power, the what?
Going to evict the
Johnny's or whatever it is. And all of that to now pursue and arrest somebody. What do you make of that?
That's a good step.
Specific Samuel for Sampofo. Do you expect anything useful will come out of this?
Yes, very useful.
Arrest?
Yeah, I find something very useful. This is what it will come down to. Because the dialogue is imminent, I expect that when the police are done with their investigations, okay, they will bring if it turns out that in their investigations that the tape is genuine, they will bring the results to the dialogue. That's where it will be dealt with. Because you see, in our cultural context, it will look very awkward, for lack of a better word, to have Mr. Ampofo at the dialogue, and when he closes from the dialogue, then he's going to court to defend himself. I think politically we haven't reached that stage yet. You see, we are used to that system where when we give mandate to one institution to do something, we seek to stop all the others. But you see, if you compare to the US, where they were talking about the Russian interference, you have 17 organizations in the US, all of them investigating and came to one conclusion. But Ghana, maybe it would appear that because we have very meager resources, the scarce resources, we like to commit to one institution. So for me, Ofusu Ampofo being charged in court doesn't look politically, the best option now. Whatever the police find, they should bring it to the dialogue and we'll deal with it over there.
But there's a basis for the arraignment.
Yes,
there's a basis for the arrest and charges.
Oh, as for the arrest, yes, certainly. Once there's a complaint that he's the one, naturally under our law, there's a suspicion, and so the police should go into it. But he's innocent until proven guilty.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes,
he is
very innocent until proven guilty.
Just a minute on that. People say it won't amount to much because we have enough history.
Yeah, there's enough
and precedent to show.
There's enough history that it won't amount to much. And so if people are cynical that any result will come out of it, they're probably justified. We have a parliament in this country that says it cannot identify the people who held up signs. And every Ghanaian who has eyes saw the people. We know them. We know their names.
Right.
But parliament says it cannot identify it. We are so used to lying that we tell the lies and laugh over it.
It's brinkmanship.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I had one last thing to say. Is it time to set up an official secret service in Ghana along the US lines?
Yeah.
The original secret service was set up in 1865, not as presidential protection. We were to fight counterfeiting. When President McKinley was killed in 1901, Congress asked the secret service, because they had shown themselves to be so effective, to become the presidential guard. So from about 1902, they have become this force. If we set up a professional force, the middle ground, not just presidential protection, but national security and national security force, let's go to parliament. Let's get an act of parliament that authorizes it and determines the number, who is recruited, etc., etc. Let's do that. The candidates, and see, that's why the US, they have their confidence in it. When you become the presumptive candidate, you are immediately assigned a secret service.
Yeah.
So you work with them, you begin to trust them that they can do their work professionally. They may not have voted for you, but they can still do the work professionally and protect you. One of them took a bullet for Reagan.
Okay.
Reagan, Tim McCarthy.
But when you said bullet, I meant as in different.
Yeah, but interesting. In 1980, that was 1980. By 1964, something like that, he had taken a bullet from Nkrumah.
Right.
But anyway, my point is that let's do that. And look, anybody coming to office would have had people who were his guards in the time.
Right.
In a quiet manner, we can say, okay, maybe 10 of your people will be put on contract, trained to help Secret Service take care of you. When you leave power, you go with your 10. Yeah. You know, we can put in place common sense, things to do these things and move on instead of having this.
On this note,
but do we need that middle force, Samson? Okay. Do we need a national security force? We need that debate. This ought to go to parliament. The existing force is not supported by any law. And let's just go back to history. The PNDC could do it because this was their provision on national security. The council may, PNDC law 42, section 5, the council may establish such bodies and appoint such persons as it may deem fit
to perform functions of all the persons or bodies responsible for the matters relating to national security before the commencement of the proclamation.
Okay.
So under this, they could have established it. But under the Constitution, this is an illegal
Yes,
clause.
yes.
Let's legalize it.
However, Samson, is what you are suggesting it would be okay and possible in an ideal world. I'm not sure that in Ghana we'll be able to create that middle ground group that can be dispassionate and neutral and handle all these things. I believe that the answer is in the problem. All the current presidents and the past presidents must take this on as a big national assignment towards conflict resolution and sit down and come out with a plan openly that they give to, I believe, the military especially, who are good at these things, to execute and do it on behalf of Ghana. At election time, we will see little groups formed again because of what we do during election time. But they should not translate into where potential presidents promise them that when I come, you will become A, B, C, D. The promises should now be different. It should not be a promise to become a military man or to have a big job, but a promise to at least be able to sustain some good life.
But one doesn't exclude the other. I'm making the suggestion in addition to all that we are doing.
I think when we get to the point where we trust each other, we can then have that middle ground.
We may never do. I mean, he's talking about neutral people.
Then you are back to what I'm saying. We may never do.
I don't believe there are any neutral people in Ghana. But there are people
so
who are
let's put everybody in
for professional people who can do the work.
And suddenly we seem to forget that even at the level of national service, we are supposed to get some training that mimics,
because
it's in the Constitution.
Yeah.
In the national service.
Yes, but Samson, what was this haste to charge the NDC chairman when other people have done these things in the immediate past? We've heard all sorts of things. He says something which can be interpreted anyhow, and immediately he's charged granting bail and all that.
I think it's misleading. I think they cautioned him. They are now investigating.
Yes, but then what are they granting bail?
All right, we take a break. We take a break. When we return, briefly to the Emil Short Commission that's wrapped up its work as in the public hearings, and to the law school to see if we can pass a law exam. We'll be right back.